Very pleased to sit here on stage with Elodie Storm and Andrea Gagliano, both from Getty Images. Elodie is a Senior Director, Strategic Development at Getty Images, and Andrea is a Data Scientist in Visual Intelligence at Getty Images. And of course, I could sit here and tell you all about these two, but why do that when they're here? So can you tell us a bit about your passion for the image industry and where you guys are at right now at Getty?
Sure. So I'm in charge of strategic development for Getty Images based here on the West Coast. I've been working in visuals for a long time, and I actually started at Getty more on the creative side, building out our high-end portraiture and fashion division, of all things. And then took care of our content partnerships, where we represent the content of a lot of other large organizations like National Geographic, the BBC, Sky News. We have around 300 partners globally whose content we actually license out on their behalf. So just maybe a little bit of an intro to Getty Images overall. Getty Images is the world leader in visual communication. We have over 300 million images. That's a pretty large data set, I think, in your eyes. And we have about 150 staff photographers globally that cover sports, news, and entertainment. So we have an interesting, I think, perspective on both the editorial coverage, but also the creative and illustration coverage for brands. So these are the two perspectives that we can talk about today.
And my background is in machine learning and creativity and art, and so I sort of marry those together at Getty as a data scientist doing visual intelligence research. So primarily on the creative side that Elodie was just talking about, of how do we understand what's in our images that maybe is what is important to our customers and those brands that those customers are using to sort of tell their story out in the world.
So these 300 million images, like that's obviously a range of all kinds of things. You have all kinds of different clients. You know, how are these images sourced? Like, how do you guys decide what images belong on the Getty platform?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and that's a process that we've obviously refined along the years. So Getty Images was founded in 1995 and was one of the first, companies online in the media space. I think when you have so many images coming through, some of them that we shoot ourselves, some of them that come from our partners, what we do is, first of all, we have a way to structure the data to make sure that not everything gets uploaded. So there is a very strict format that people have to follow to put images online. And then when talking about the creative process, we actually go in and look at pretty much every picture at this stage of the game and quality rank the image, and using a variety of scoring to understand the quality. One might be the aesthetic quality, the other one might be the conceptual quality of the image, but then also the diversity. There is a lot of factors that come into that equation. And I think that's the work that we're trying to understand now, is how do we use AI to make that process easier at scale? And that's one of the things that Andrea and I are working on.
I put this image up here of sort of the life cycle of an image when it comes in. We have somebody that's behind the camera who's actually taking a picture. We have this review process where we're putting some sort of quality rank on our image, or keywording the image with what is in there. Then there's the process of somebody actually coming to our site and searching for whatever it is they're looking for. They have an idea in their head, they're translating that into the words, and then we try to serve up images that somehow match to that query that they're putting in. And then those images are selected and sort of put out into the world. And in talking about AI can come in at sort of any of these stages along the way.
Great. So again, that's so many. That's such a large volume. Obviously, no one human would look at 300 million images and be able to approve said process. So, it's great that you have these systems in place. What are the actual problems that you're trying to solve with the current system? Are there issues out there that you're trying to solve that AI can help with or that you're helping to develop with? You don't have to spill the secret sauce, of course, but if there's something that you guys are working on that you can share, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think when thinking through, and I think that's one of the things that Andrea and I talk about a lot, which is like, what is the actual use case? What is the business case, right, behind AI? And so I think when thinking through it, both internally, like us, Getty Images, being our own client in a way, and then thinking about it in terms of serving our clients, those are two interesting points of views, and that tend to come back to one thing, which is, how do you get to the image you're looking for? How do you solve for curation at scale? And that's really something that's hard to do. And I think that's something that the team has worked on, particularly to our needs, that's now starting to serve our clients' needs around the concept of authenticity, for example.
Yeah, so authenticity is something that we hear a lot from our users of what they want. We're sort of known as a stock image company, and there's a big difference between sort of the authentic, genuine picture versus something that's maybe stocky or in a studio setting. And so that's something that we at Getty have sort of built an AI model to try to understand what is that difference between an authentic image and a stocky image. And what we actually do is we use that in our review process. So this first step here of we have an image that comes in, there's millions and millions of images that come in, that's too many for the humans to capture, especially as there's been a huge increase in the photos that do come in because it's so easy to just take so many photos. And so what we do is we take this authenticity model that we have, and we're able to sort the images that come in so that the ones that are more likely to be authentic or this higher quality are actually sorted together. And so it makes it easier for our creatives who are going through and reviewing all the images that come through our systems to review those faster. The AI isn't making some decision based off of the model or those images that come in, but rather helping to sort of sort imagery so that the humans can do their job faster.
Do you want to, yeah.
Yeah, so just some pictures to sort of show that is these are images that, it's probably hard to see, but there's scores on the bottom. So that top left one has a score of 98.9. And what our model is doing is we're saying this image is more likely to be authentic. And so these images, you can see there's a range of different sort of scenes or scenarios that are going on. There's a range of different types of people. People aren't really posed. They don't have that fake smile. They're not looking at the camera. And so if you compare these images to maybe the other end of the spectrum, images that are seen as very stocky, these, you can kind of tell they're being taken in a studio setting. They have the studio lighting, the light glare in the background. Maybe the background's a little too perfect or a little too exact. A lot of the smiles are maybe cheesy, or they're looking at the cameras in a certain way.
Real funny when you said, I'm not sure any of you can see this, and you point here, and I turn around and look too. Like, I've got a monitor right
Oh,
there.
yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yes.
How many images would you guess that you turn away? Like, how many don't make the cut? And out of those, do you feel like you're missing some that probably could if there was, with some different algorithms and AI in there? Like, do you feel like some are being overlooked, or you're very pleased with the way that it works and the ones that don't make the cut just don't make the cut?
We're actually very intentional about having every image be looked at. We don't want to turn away images in fear of that the AI maybe hasn't captured something accurately. And so we're very intentional. All of our images make it into our library and into our collection, so they all have a chance of being shown on our website. They're all looked at by a human in some way. And then really the end piece of that is which images are actually shown on the website.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I would just caveat that a little bit. So that's true on the creative side,
Yeah.
and where we, which images are really used for illustration, as long as the images have a model release and everything that they need to have. But on the editorial side, obviously, which is much more news related, we're very careful that the images actually are what they're supposed to be and have proper metadata and the date and are not suspicious in any way. So that's that's a different place where AI at some point might have a role to play, which is like, how do we ground images in truth and make sure that nothing that is manipulated, comes on our site and is being represented to the public as something that's news.
Yeah, because obviously images are very powerful. They don't necessarily need words to go with them. So you want to make sure those images represent the accurate thing.
The accurate, absolutely.
So that leads into my next question for you is, how do you guys collaborate across the different teams inside of Getty? Obviously, you're in two different, but I'm guessing there's more than two divisions inside of Getty. Like how do you guys work together in those divisions?
Yeah, no, I think it's been really fun for Andrea and I to get to know each other over the last, couple of, years, and just really my role is much more external facing, so it's both trying to assess what AI technology we can leverage, and then also understand how we can use, help our clients with that technology and see where the rubber, sort of hits the road. Is like, can we really say what we say? Can we really do what we say we can do? And then the other piece is, can we leverage other technologies? And so that's where there is a lot of collaboration. And then also with our creative team, I know that Andrea is working with very closely.
Yeah, so working a lot both on the business side of sort of what's needed out in the world, but then also working with, we have an internal creative team. And so, for example, in building this authenticity versus stocky model, we worked closely with that creative team to help have them come up with the training data set that we used to train that AI model. And that was really important because authenticity is something that's a really subjective topic. There's a lot of different dimensions to it. Is it sort of the actual look and lighting and coloring of an image, or is it more about the diversity of the subjects in the image? Is it more about where the image is taken and what's being depicted? There's so many different dimensions, and our creatives have a lot more of that deeper and nuanced understanding of what that word even means.
Excellent. How do you scale your AI efforts to a creative business?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're trying to figure out again, like where does the AI help and has the most impact? And, I think that's something that we're still trying to figure out. I think, one of my, what I think is really interesting particularly about our data set is that we probably have the largest conceptual data set associated with images, because if you think about it, we've been keywording hundreds of millions of images since '95 to not just say, here is a woman in a blue shirt, for example, but here is a representation of freedom, right? And what does that mean? So that when people come to our search engine and say, I want an image that gives such and such feeling, they actually have images that have those feelings in them. And so I think, for me, it's a question for you also, is like, how unique is that for you as a data scientist? Like, what kind of raw material is that, for you?
Yeah, it's really fascinating because some of what you're talking about is sort of letting go of the human words that we would maybe attach to images. So we could have these words on images, but that doesn't necessarily convey the sort of emotional feeling or idea or concept that's being evoked by that. And so when we talk about scaling sort of in terms of creative ability, something we really think about a lot that's been mentioned throughout today is what is the machine really good at and what is the human really good at, and really harnessing that and emphasizing, sort of focusing on sort of making those skills stronger as opposed to having the machine try to do the human task. So in something that's maybe much more conceptual in our imagery, that sort of takes this extra layer of thinking. It's a metaphorical level of thinking. It's a sort of understanding the context or the historical context of an image, where it was taken, who it was taking it, what story it sits in. And when we think about scaling creativity, it's not trying to scale those capabilities. Like a lot of that is being left up to the human, but how do we take those rote and mundane and tedious tasks out of, or try to do those with the machine to really help the human take what is in front of them to that next conceptual level.
Well, and that brings me like maybe to the panels thing, which is we've also taken that technology and tried to help particularly our large media clients and make it easier for them to return images as they are pulling text in. So that's an article I think from, I can't remember if it was the BBC? Yeah. Right, that's an article from the BBC. So what that allows is that the BBC enters like an article that's been written by one of their journalists, and then we start suggesting images without them having to go into like our site and start pulling up a keyword search. So it analyzes the text and then pulls out key keywords, and then we're coming up with suggestions of things that are mentioned in the article, and obviously they can adapt. So we're not making the decision of like, this is the picture you should be running, and this story is really about, you know, this individual, but essentially we're making some suggestions that will make it easier and faster for them to get to the image that they're looking for.
Just so I understand, can you go back to the previous
Yep.
slide? So I'm the person that writes this article, and I subscribe to Getty Images, right? Mm-hmm. And the service that you guys are now providing, it goes and finds these keywords, and then it suggests these are the photos that I should use based on the words
That you could use,
that are already Getty approved, that are already to
Yeah.
go right into the story as is.
Yeah.
Yep. And the unique piece about this, if you were had read this article and you need to now find an image for it, there's probably a couple ideas of images that might come to mind that you could search for on the site. What we're finding users really enjoy about this tool is sort of the inspirational aspect of it. So it's showing sort of on the thread 2, which is places, it shows runway, UK, airport, Heathrow Airport. These were all terms that came out of this article about Heathrow Airport. And you could search just on runway, you could search just on UK, you could search just on airport, or you could search with all of those together. And so this tool sort of gives you that option and functionality to quickly move between different words that might be of interest and combine those words. You can move those words between the threads. And so it's really trying to take text, extract information from it, and use that to sort of inspire the customer in trying to figure out which images they want to bring together.
And that goes back to collaboration too, right? That we're not trying to say, this is the picture. We're trying to just help photo editors make decisions quicker.
How much time do you think this process saves? Rough guess. I don't need exact numbers. I'm not like 2.3 minutes. Is it overall, like if you look at it in a year or 2 years, like, I mean, this seems like, how much would this be beneficial? Or what are you hearing from?
Per article in the 0 to 3 to 5 minute range, or 30 seconds to 5 minutes. But if you have a photo editor that is doing this all day long, sitting at a photo desk, that's a lot of time added up over every day and every year.
How do you guys, obviously, the amount of data, I'm sure, is just astronomical, but how do you guys make sure that the data sets that you guys have are diverse enough? And I know that plenty of people in this room, and in fact, I have a coworker who, when you search like office work, the things that come up are mostly just white people hanging out in a space.
Yep.
So I'm sure there's probably not the exact answer for that, but kind of building on the things that have happened throughout the day. We've talked about diversity and being able to, whoever's writing the algorithms, there might be some kind of bias in it. But how do you make sure, or what are you guys doing at Getty to make sure those data sets are diverse?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think the first thing is that we do have people actually quality rank the images for that. So we look at images and we take diversity as one of the key, metrics for quality. So that's one of the ways. But then with that comes a lot of questions, and I think Andrea did a great talk yesterday to the office where she brought up this nursing example that maybe you want to share. So this is like the search results for when you're looking for a nurse on the Getty Images website. But,
So when you search on the Getty Images website, you search for nurse, and you find that the majority of the images that come back are females. which at least makes sense here in the US because quite a large proportion of nurses in the US are females. And in fact, if you look over those first page of search results, 86.3% of the images are female nurses. And then if you look at US Census numbers, 89.3% of nurses in the US are female. So this number is pretty equivalent. And so one of the questions that us as Getty that we're starting to really grapple with and talk about a lot more and figure out is, should our site, we're presenting these images to the world, should those be representative of the world or should they be more inclusionary? Should we adjust our search results to show a more equal balance between male and female, or a more equal balance of races and genders and body types, or should we be showing the world objectively, and what is our role with the customers that come to us?
Well, I will say that we have done a lot of work around diversity, right? I mean, a few years back, I think it was 5 years or 6 years ago now, we launched this partnership with Lean In and Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In, and we were very early in changing the way that women were being represented in images, especially as they were working, right? So before you used to have this really stereotypical image of a woman climbing up the ladder, for example, to represent women in the workplace. And now we've really pushed the envelope in terms of having much more, again, authentic imagery. We've done partnerships with Refinery 29, where we've really pushed for real representation of women. Where now, as France just passed this law against retouching, we're not accepting any image where any parts of the body or the face has been actually retouched. So this is all work that we're doing to actually actively change perception, and that's a real responsibility we have because our images go everywhere, right? So we have a really big impact in that way. But then there is also this question of representing reality, and also Andrea and I were just talking about that. How much of some of the biases that might be within our algorithm are actually input by the users?
Yeah, which is when we talk about creating training data sets, one route we could take is to rely on some sort of user data to create that. It could be how people are clicking on images on our website or the words that they're typing into the search box. And we did a small study where we actually looked over many search queries over a year that our customers had put in. And we found that there was sort of a biased relationship in how people come to our site and type in what they're looking for. We found that words like business were highly related to words like CEO and leader. So people would come in and say, I want a picture of a businessman leading a team. Whereas words that were business and women were more of the creativity, empathy, and fashion. So somebody might come in to the search box and want an image of a woman supporting a team, or these more softer skill words compared to sort of leading and power that are more masculine in nature, just based off of sort of the existing biases that we all sort of talk about and naturally say, whether we realize it or not.
A little bit earlier, you talked about inspiration. What do you think the difference is between, say, curation and inspiration?
Do you want to take that?
Yeah, I think that it's such especially in relation to AI, I think that it's so fascinating because AI has this capability to sort of be almost a partner in some of the tools that we build out. And when you think of a partner or somebody that you're working with, that's an opportunity for inspiration and for somebody to sort of trigger new ideas or related ideas. And AI has the opportunity to do that. And then it becomes a question of how are we helping people curate? That's a really exciting opportunity, but also a responsibility that comes with that, because we don't want to inspire someone in the wrong direction or just inspire them in their own echo chamber that they exist in already.
And lastly, if you were to get in your time machine, go forward, not backwards, but forward, where do you see these new processes that you're working on, these algorithms, working with AI, where do you see that in 12 months from now, but more, and that's obviously short term, and then where would you see this and where would you hope it is in, say, 10 years? I don't care about 5. 1.
Yeah, 1 to 10. Yeah. I really see I really see 10 years as having machines as a true collaborator when it comes to creative acts, of how can you have somebody that's really, especially for novice creators or creators that don't have a particular expertise, like how do we, creativity in general is such a scary place. Like people are like, oh, I'm not creative, or it's risky. And so having artificial intelligence that can come in and really help and support a creator through that journey, through that learning, and inspire them. On the 1 year, it'll be more of what's going on today, of how do we really take these technologies and put them into places that we can see results quickly or help someone scale quickly, is really where they'll be in the first year.
Yeah, I think for me it's also, and I agree with Andrea. I think again, like curation is a big problem, and one that becomes even bigger as there is more and more images. Images are, essentially flooding the planet and our communication. It becomes a lot harder to sift through it. So how do we make it easier for people to get to the right images? And so that's one. And then the other one is actually around sourcing. And I think AI will also help us source images in a way that will make it easier to get to representations of communities now that might be more underrepresented, and get us, to get to a much better representation as well.
Great. Please join me in thanking Andrea and Elodie.